Welcome to Redacted Nuisance, that 10 to 15 minutes of nonsense on Tinternet by me, Dr. J, using they as a pronoun. Realised I didn't introduce myself last episode. That was a bit weird. I just assumed you all knew who I was. Interesting. Anyway, I'm Dr. J, use they as a pronoun. I do this thing called Redacted Nuisance where I rant at the laptop for about 10 to 15 minutes, do it all in one take, then paste it up onto internet. I get to hear it back when you do. I have no idea of what I've said. Sometimes I'm like, that's a spicy take. Also, why is it called Redacted Nuisance? It's called Redacted Nuisance because I would love to call it Queer Nuisance. However, if I call it Queer Nuisance, some of y'all will not be able to listen to it because of restrictions in the country that you live in, or some people may feel uncomfortable listening to something that's labelled as queer if it's on their feed and other people could see it because they're not yet ready to be out as queer or as interested in queer things. And also, if I call it queer, it puts me in a whole pile of different spaces on some of the media, which means that people won't get to hear this. So I redact it. So I redact the queerness, but I make it very clear that I redact the queerness by calling it Redacted Nuisance. For I am a queer nuisance, and if you've read some Sarah Ahmed, she does one called I can't pronounce it, but it's a whole idea that by being queer within a space, you queer up the space, so you become like a queer nuisance. And I am that queer nuisance. I am queer within a space and I queer up that space. So, I wanted to give an update on the transphobic incident. Now, I'm recording this sometime in June and there's still stuff that I need to go do and carry on with, so there will be more to come from this. But while I was in New Zealand, I needed to complain about how my complaint was handled because while the centre manager, amazing, we had a really good conversation there. He's totally understood, or if he's not understood, he's willing to listen to where I've come from, what I'm trying to do, what it meant to have somebody attack you while you're in a pair of togs at a poolside, why his team, in not seeing it as a hate crime, meant that it happened again the second time, but it also meant that they didn't handle it within the right frameworks. So that was all great. Since then, there was an email chain that went around a number of councillors where some wild statements were made, and I'm just going to use the word wild. I was referred to as being intersex, which I'm not. I don't know whether that is part of my body chemistry, but it's not an identity that I've ever felt fits with me. It's not something that I've ever engaged with. I know that my hormone profile is relatively normal for somebody with PMOS, used to be PCOS. Polycystic ovaries is now polymetabolic ovarian syndrome or something like that. Essentially, my ovaries are chonky and overproduce a number of hormones. Estrogen, a little bit, testosterone, quite a bit, which means that I've got a body that is kind of, can be read either way. But it's not an intersex condition. I'm not somebody who is intersex. So to have somebody go, well, as an intersex person, and I'm like, I believe you've misunderstood the word non-binary. They then tried to make out that I was the cause of the hate crime for existing in the space, which is incorrect. My existence in the space is my existence in the space. The hate crime is how somebody reacts to my existence within the space. And a hate crime actually somebody needs to take action to do. You cannot hate crime you cannot hate crime just by existing within a space. They also tried to turn it into a queers versus Muslims dialogue problem. It was never. The person who attacked me was not visibly Muslim in any way. I don't know their actual faith. I don't know if they are a person of faith. They were not obviously one of the practicing Muslim women who I know from the swimming pool. And in fact, the practicing Muslim woman and many of the other women at the swimming pool who came up to talk to me, who were black or brown women from either a London or UK based background, or an Afro-Caribbean background, or an African background. I'm really bad with accents, so I struggle to tell the difference between some of those accents. And the women were from Southeast Asia, of various parts of Southeast Asia. All of the women who came out to talk to me afterwards, after the incident, and in the next couple of days, weeks, when I was back at the gym, all were checking in that I was okay. They were all checking in, saying, I saw what happened. Are you okay? Because that didn't seem nice, didn't seem pleasant. Because also people don't know how to react when shit like that goes down. So yeah, those were the things, and there were a few other little minor bits of just misreporting things. And so I went back to the people in the email. Several emails later, I now have an apology. I now need to go and do some of the emotional labour, because it always falls on the victim, especially when you're trans or non-binary or black or a woman or whatever, to do the emotional labour to educate the cis men, because they are both cis men, on the reality of the situation, what they said, how what they said matters, how making misstatements about me, my gender, and also discussing my gender and my genitalia with a number of people without my consent is not the most legal of things to have done. So I'm not going to name the person that I need to go talk to, because that would be unfair. But yeah, there's a number of things that I'm going to be following up in the next couple of weeks. If I will keep you up to date with it. The other side is, how am I at going to the gym? The answer is variable. There are days where I can go to the gym and it's completely fine. And I am going to the aquarobic session and I feel completely fine. And I'm going to a swim session, I feel 70% fine. And there are other days where I just can't. I just can't bring myself to put myself into that situation, into that space. Which is really sad, because for my mental health and for my physical health, exercise matters so much. And this is, and I'm going to tackle it in the next episode, about the EHRC guidance. That's why this matters so much, especially around sports, because being able to exercise really helps, not just your physical health, but also your mental health. One of the things Barb pointed out to me was that my entire, I was going to say demeanour, but that sounds like I go from very angry to very chill. But my entire vibe changes dramatically if I've had a chance to exercise. It just makes such a difference to me. It makes such a difference to how I cope with the world, how I cope with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that gets thrown at us every day. So I'm now not having full-on panic attacks. I'm just having a sensation of discomfort and mild panic going into changing rooms, which means that when I'm going anywhere, I have a tendency to either turn up and not get changed. So I'll turn up in my gym gear with just a jumper on, and then come home in my gym gear with a jumper on. I'm a stinky child. I also live 10 minutes walk maximum from the gym, so that's kind of a bit doable. If I need to wear my togs to go to a swimming session or an aquarobic session, I'll change into my togs at home so that I only need to change out of them. So there's only one time when I'm having to be naked in the changing room, not to, if I can avoid it. So there's lots of little things that I'm doing to make myself feel more comfortable. There's also an entire thing which I didn't realise was quite such a journey until talking with somebody, and they're like, the amount of thought you have to put into going into a changing room is quite ridiculous. So, for example, when I'm in a changing room, I always choose to get changed the furthest distance from the door. That's simply so that if somebody walks in and sees me and they misread my gender, so they look at me and go, should you actually be in this changing room? You do not appear to look like everyone else around you. Sometimes people will walk back and go, oh, I must have made a mistake. And then that's they will walk in and make a very loud statement. Oh, I thought I was in the wrong changing room, and look pointedly at me. That's happened multiple times. So I tend to ensure that I'm not the first person that somebody sees. So people are primed for the fact that this is a woman's changing room, or this is this gender's changing room, and then they see me and go, oh, you must be one of the people that I've already seen. You look slightly different, but you're one of the type of body types that I've already seen. I also don't like to get changed in the individual cubicles, and a lot of people go, why not? And the style of the individual cubicles with the gap at the top and the bottom, I've been in those as a child, as a teenager, and had people literally trying to climb in or under the door to see my body because they don't believe my body is whatever they thought it was, and they want to see my naked body to yell abuse at it. And I just don't want to have that sensation again. So I tend to get changed in the open because I'm fast. My dad taught me to be fast at getting changed because Dreamy Child was taught how to get changed fast and get out of there. Or I'll come in and make sure that you're changed, and that will be embarrassing for everybody. And it also means that if something happens, there's other people around. So people are less likely to do something abusive than when there's no one else around. And I know that sounds really horrible and sad, and it is. So that's where I am, trying to get to the gym to work out in a way that doesn't make me feel scared and panicked. And yeah,